What do you think happens in a cult situation where one day you're just walking along having a good time and the next day you've found it?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, not necessarily a cargo cult, but you explain those in the book, but it's a snapping experience, and it can happen if you find God, Jesus, the Lord, Allah.
Yeah.
One day you don't know who you are, the next day you find the answer.
Yes. This is the other way. I mentioned childhood indoctrination as one way in which people become religious, but you've now mentioned another way. There are people who are restlessly seeking after some sort of enlightenment. They try one religion after another. They move from one cult to another. They have a go at being a charismatic Christian, a Mormon, a Muslim, and they're prime fodder for being captured by cults. And cults go out and actually catch them, actually recruit them, invite them in, offer them friendship, warm, comforting friendship, a cup of coffee. These people may be very lonely. They're taken in, they're looked after, and gradually they're sucked into the community, and it becomes harder and harder to leave. And some of them do leave, some of them are rescued, some of them escape, and they tell their stories. Maybe they move on to another cult, maybe they cleanse themselves of the need to do that kind of thing. And we learn, and there are quite a lot of rather moving testimonies from people who've been caught up in cults and who've escaped and have described the experience. I don't understand really what kind of mentality it is that's susceptible to that. I don't believe I would be, although perhaps I would. I think that there are people who somehow get captivated by this kind of thing.
And cult experts have told me in the past, it doesn't have to do with how intelligent you are. A highly intelligent person can become a Mooney. A highly intelligent person joins Scientology.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I see what you mean. I'm skeptical. I hear that over and over again, and I sort of wonder whether it isn't that just occasionally you meet somebody who has some sort of intelligence, like they're good at mathematics or something, and you say, this is a highly intelligent person. I think there are limits to that. I mean, people tell me that there are highly intelligent people who believe that the world is only 6,000 years old. I doubt if they're highly intelligent. People tell me they're highly intelligent. I'm skeptical. I'd like to see more evidence that they are. I'd like to see the evidence that somebody who seriously has looked at the evidence and concluded that because his holy book says the world is young, therefore the world is young. I don't think that person is highly intelligent.
One of your first was the selfish gene. What was that about?
That's going back a bit.
It is, but...
It was a way of looking at evolution by natural selection. It was the gene's eye view. People often think that individual organisms are the unit of selection, the unit of Darwinian selection. And I pointed out that another way to look at it, which in some ways is better, is that the gene is the unit of selection. And genes are using bodies as their vehicles of reproduction. And so you can interpret what an animal does as being for the good of its genes.
And the genes heal us as well? Can they heal the body? No. So not that far.
Well, I wouldn't use a word heal. I would say that you can interpret what an animal is good for. Why does it have wings? Why does it have behavior patterns? Why does it do this? Why does it do that? It does it to preserve its genes. And the reason it does it to preserve its genes is that the genes inside it have come down to it through a long line, an unbroken line of successful ancestors, every one of whom succeeded in surviving long enough to reproduce. Otherwise, they wouldn't pass the genes on. Otherwise, the genes wouldn't be there. So that's why moles are so good at digging, and birds are so good at flying, and ants are so good at foraging, and humans are so good at thinking. It's because we contain the genes that made our ancestors good, where good means survive to reproduce and pass on those genes.
Survival of the fittest, in a sense?
Well, survival of the fittest would be the way to put it from an individual point of view. The fittest organism, the fittest individual, is the one that survives and passes on its genes. I turned that upside down and said, it's survival of the genes that you want to focus on.
When you get hate mail, and I know you do, who predominantly writes to you?
Well, religious fundamentalists do.
Across the spectrum?
I'm not sure there is much of a spectrum.
A Muslim fundamentalist, a Christian fundamentalist, a Buddhist?
No, I've never had a letter from a Muslim. I don't think they read my books. I mean, I've never really had one. Christian fundamentalists, I don't think they really read them either, actually. They read what other people have said about them. I mean, I recognize certain stock phrases which come not from my books, but which come from creationist literature, which have picked it up from other creationist literature. These people don't really read. I mean, they just have a few pamphlets, and they trot out stock phrases from their pamphlets. Like, there are no transitional fossils. They've all been taught to say there are no transitional fossils. They've all been taught to say, where does the information come from? These are stock phrases, lists of phrases that they've been taught to say when they write to people like me.
However, many say homosexuality is a sin. Homosexuality is wrong.
Yeah, they've been
it
taught
should
to say
not
that too.
be.
Yes, they've been taught to say that as well, because you can find certain biblical verses, and this is bigotry, and bigotry is one of their long suits.
At the fundamentalist level.
Yeah.
When you hear somebody, and this is reported, that Pat Robertson said Katrina was started by a lesbian, Katrina happened because of a lesbian comedian or something like that.
Yes.
And Pat Robertson has followers,
Yes.
many
Yes.
fervent followers.
Yes, yes. So the logic is this. There was living in the city of New Orleans a particular woman who was a lesbian comedian. So God zapped the entire city rather than giving her a judicious heart attack, for example, which would seem to be a more sensible, a more godlike way of doing things.
Right.